Hey, Harrison Young here at Verdure Surfboards. This is video 2 of the shaping series, and we're going to be looking at doing fin box and leash plug installs. So this is the finished shape, all ready to go. Rails rolled, everything's nice and ready. You can see rolled the rails and then have this hard edge in the tail, which you can get a really nice sharp edge on the wood, like that. Obviously you don't have a stringer line with these, so there's a couple of different ways you can find that. Obviously, if you've got a swallow, you can run a piece of tape or something from nose to tail. I think the best way though is to take a scribe and scribe the outline and just draw a faint pencil line on the wood on both sides. So once you've got your two scribe lines from the outline, the easiest way is to just grab your shaping square like this and use these 4 points to find the center, and then you'll have that perfect stringer line. Once you mark your center line, then you can just go ahead and mark your fin boxes out the same way that you normally would. So I've marked my line, and now I'm going to take the futures jig and place it where it's supposed to go. Because we're routing through a little bit of wood, you want to clamp the jig down. You want to place a little bit of wood, something like this, underneath, so between the deck and the clamp. In a normal board, you're just routing till this is flush with the foam. But with these, you want to route so it's just about a mil deeper. And that way you're going to get a good layer of resin along here. So when you're ordering the blank, we ask for the fin box placement, and that is because we put these wooden blocks inside the blanks where the fins are going to go. Because we're not using fiberglass over the top of the fin boxes, we found that using these wood blocks provides really good reinforcement, and we haven't had any issues with fin boxes coming out. But you want to take a couple of passes to go through the wood rather than just doing one big plunge straight away. So now I'll take my futures box and just test the fit. It looks like it's going to fit well. The futures boxes have these little notches that help hold it in place in the foam. Because we've got this wood block here, they obviously are going to sit up onto it and not let it rest in properly. So what you do is put it in and just give it a press down. You can hear the wood sort of crunching a little bit. And then you just rest your chisel into the dent and give it a push.
Nice.
So once you got those, then you can see it just sits in really nicely. Final good little check to do is put your box in, and then you can just get a good look and really see how it's sitting. If you use a straight edge, you get a really good idea. You can put it there, and that allows you to see that the flange is sitting below the wood line, but this top piece that gets sanded off is sitting up above. So with the router, you can get these little bits of wood grain hairs coming up on the back of the box, sometimes a little bit on the front. And the best way to deal with that is just getting a round sanding block or using your sander polisher pad with a little bit of 150 grit sandpaper, and then just sanding them off You just want to kind of stay with the grain and they come off. So it's important to mask off around the fin box so that when you put the resin in, you don't have resin spewing out onto the wood. And there's a little trick to it. You basically want to mark up on both sides and then one across the middle, and that will give you 2 layers on these edges here. So just do the outsides first and mark up pretty much right on, just a fraction off of it. So I've got 2 sides. And then one across the top of them. And then you're just running the scalpel along the edge of the fin box. So now setting the leech plug. We use these cool leech plugs from Cine Surf in Australia, and they're made of wood and they also have a vent in the bottom of them. It's important to make sure the depth is right, just like a normal leech plug. So I like to just place it where I'm going to place it, and then just check with my calipers that I have enough thickness there for the plug. So I'm just setting the depth of my router to where the leash plug. I want to get as much depth as I can and just have a little bit of a flange on top. So then I'm placing the plug where I want it and putting the routing jig over the top. And same again, I'm going to clamp this routing jig to the board. So now that my hole's routed, I'm just going to place the plug in first and check that the depth is right. You want to tape around the hole so that when you set the box with resin, you don't have resin going all into the cork. Now the boxes are all routed, ready to go, taped them up. It's time to set the actual plugs with resin. We're mixing up the epoxy resin now for the plugs, and for 2 plugs you need about 64 grams. Is 20 grams of hardener and 44 of resin. So I got my resin mixed up. I'm going to add to it adhesive filler. That just helps thicken it up, makes it a bit stronger as well. And also going to add black pigment to this one. These natural earth pigments, a little bit goes a long way. Mixing it up to create a bit of a paste. I like to pour down the bottom and then up along the flange. You want to have enough in there so that obviously there's no air bubbles. Go ahead, grab the fin box and place it in and just apply even pressure and let the resin ooze up and out like that. And then I take the paddle pop stick and just use it to smooth out the resin that has come back up and out. So I'm just taking a little bit extra and making sure it's all nice and filled up. So once you've set your fin boxes, you'll want to go around and just fill any gaps between the bottom deck and the rails. So what I'm going to do is mix up some clear resin and fairing compound, and that is the same mixture that's used to laminate the board, so you'll get a perfect color match with that. And then just go around, and I like to use the paddle pop stick to just work the resin into any of those little gaps. Each board is different. Sometimes there's no gaps, sometimes there's a little more. Also, there's the joins. Sometimes you get these little joins between the plywood, and it's good to do the same thing, just fill them up with a little bit of that resin. So now we're going to set the leash plug into the board. With these vented leash plugs, it's important to make sure that you don't get resin in the actual vent. And the way that we do that is take a little bit of the resin I just mixed up and then just get a small portion of it here, and I'm going to add the adhesive filler to it, and that will stir up into a paste, which then I'll put around here, and it just creates a seal that I can put it in and then pour resin on top and know that the runny resin is not going to get down and into that vent. This is the adhesive filler. So I've got my paste, and just simply just a thin ring to create a seal. You don't want too much, obviously, because then it will push over into the vent as well. And then go ahead and drop it in. Press it down, and then I'm able to just pour resin straight into that gap. So this is the resin to now pour around the leggy plug, and I'm going to tint it with this natural earth pigment raw sienna, which just gives it a nice brown look to match the plug itself and the cork. Just a little bit goes a long way. So it's good to just create a little crease in the cup, and that lets you get a really nice pour to go straight down into the hole. So when you're setting the leash plug, it's a good time to look for if there's any little gaps, little air bubbly pockets between the cork and the plywood rail. So you can see, like here in the Swallow, we've got a little bit of a gap there that needs to be filled up. Using the same resin with the raw sienna, and then just going to add this fairing filler, which makes it easy to sand afterwards. The combination of the raw sienna pigment and the fairing filler make this perfect match of the cork. So now I've mixed up my paste. Go ahead and just backfill any little holes that you might have. The way that we sand these, using a hard pad and 80 grit to start with. You can see that top layer of tape has sort of started to come off and it's revealing this bottom layer. And then I'll go ahead and peel the tape off. To avoid pulling the grain up, it's good to pull the tape on an angle. I'm going to now sand off these little ledges that are left and just sand the whole box flat. I like to use 180 grit with the soft sander polisher pad. That's how you want it, and then from there you can go ahead and sand the whole, once you've done both boxes, sand the whole area again with the random orbital on a 240 grit. The leash plug now, sanding that, same thing, like to use the hard pad with 80 grit just to get it all down, and then I'm going to switch over to the soft pad with the 180 to smooth it out. So when you're finished with the soft pad and the 180, it's good to jump on the random orbital with the 240 gauze again, just to smooth it all out. Final thing is just sanding off the little holes that we filled, and I like to use this little yellow kind of medium soft sanding block with the 180, and it comes off really easy. So once you've sanded the fin boxes and the leash plugs, and you've gone and just cleaned up these little holes as well, it's a good idea to just jump on the random orbital with the 240 grit and just run over the whole thing and clean it up real nice, get rid of any of those little scratches. And then you're sweet, it's ready to start coating.